Greetings, this is Greg. I'm going to make a quick video here. There's no script. I'll probably make some mistakes. It's about a Jaguar XE 25T. This thing just fell into my lap and I had it for a couple of days or so. And I had a pretty good time with the car and I wanted to tell you guys about it. Plus we ran it on the dyno, so that may be of some interest to some people. Before I go any farther, I should say I am not an expert on Jaguars. Actually, I don't really claim to be an expert on anything, but I certainly don't claim to be an expert on Jaguar. My level of knowledge about these cars is significantly lower than my level of knowledge of, say, Fiat, Alfa Romeo, or the American cars that I like, muscle car type things. So let's just get right into it. I think it's a great car. It's probably at least 90% as good as the Alfa Romeo Giulia, which I consider to be the class leader, and for quite a bit less money. It's nominally the same size as the Giulia, within an inch or two in all dimensions. It's a couple hundred pounds heavier. It has less horsepower, about 30 less horsepower, and a little more than that in the deficit of torque. It's got 247 horsepower, 269 pound-feet of torque. But with the extra couple hundred pounds, it just isn't nearly as fast or as quick as the Giulia. In fact, we originally planned to drag race him, and we scratched that plan after we drove the Jag. It is absolutely not in the same league as the Giulia in acceleration. And then in the case of my son's Giulia, which is tuned and has various mods, there was just no point in it. So we decided we'd just enjoy the car for the day and dyno it. Looking at the car, we looked underneath, looked at the brakes. We drove it in a let's say, spirited fashion. In addition to being behind the Giulia in straight line performance, its cornering and braking isn't quite as good. Although all these new cars corner so well, we're really splitting hairs. The Jag and the Giulia have very similar suspension designs. The Giulia has a little bit longer arms, probably a little bit more effective geometry, but on real roads, point to point, in traffic and stuff, you're just not going to be able to exploit the differences. I bet with equivalent tires, both cars would be really close. Although the Alfa feels a lot better. It's more sure-footed, which gives the driver more confidence. Its steering is more precise. The Alfa is just a little better, but again, the Alfa is quite a bit more money. I think it's about $5,000 more. Braking, again, the Alfa is just better. It's got bigger brakes. They're Brembos, 4-piston fixed calipers. The Jag has sliding calipers all around, just like what you'd find on a lower-end Fiat, except bigger, of course, for the weight of the Jag. No complaints, though. I mean, no issues. It's not like they're going to fade or have problems in normal traffic. The Jag's brakes are excellent. Overall, the car's a good value, and I would consider it a good alternative to the Alfa, but I'm an Alfa guy, and I like the Alfa better. To me, the Alfa's worth the extra $4,000. The Jag has a 2-liter turbo engine, just like the Alfa, and it seems to be a great engine. It makes a pretty good amount of power per pound of boost, which tells me that unless there's something really bad about this motor, maybe it's flimsy inside or something, but I don't think so. I think that the motor has a tremendous amount of tuning potential. We looked at this thing in a great amount of detail, and from our perspective, and keep in mind at my shop, our focus is ECU tuning, intercooler kits, exhaust to an extent, and intake systems. And all of those things on this Jag are a bit restrictive. So just from what I can see, there's a lot of tuning potential for this car. I don't know that anybody's in that market or that there's even a market for it. Like I say, I don't know much about these cars, but certainly potential performance of the Jag is there, and it absolutely could run right with a tuned Alfa, certainly with a stock Alfa, I think without a great deal of difficulty. Interior is great. It's all user-friendly. I'm sure that the automotive journalists nitpick it for this or that, but I found the thing to be universal and easy to understand. The only complaint I had, well, I guess I have two, and I guess I'm being nitpicky, but the paddle shifters are on the steering wheel. I really hate that because when you're really steering the car aggressively back and forth, you can lose track of which paddle's there and hit the wrong one, where when they're mounted to the column, it's an absolute no-brainer, and you don't need to use any mental energy to figure out where your paddle is. So I prefer the Alfa's paddles mounted to the steering column like a Ferrari versus mounted to the, I prefer them mounted to the column like a Ferrari versus mounted to the steering wheel like a Jaguar or a Honda or Hyundai or something. I just think that's an inferior way to do it. The other thing I'm a little concerned about is when you turn the car on, a servo raises up the little knob on the center console, which allows you to select the transmission. I just have nightmares about that servo crapping out, and you turn your car on and you can't go anywhere because the knob doesn't come up. There may be a release for it or something, you know, or maybe they used a motor that lasts 100 years or something to raise that knob. I don't know. Again, not a Jag expert, but it just struck me as something that's a little odd. Front seats are comfortable, very adjustable, whether you're 6'2", 220 like me, or you know, I had my 6-year-old grandson sat in it, and no, he's not 6, he's 8. He's 8 years old, but he's little. He sat up there, and he was able to adjust the seat so he could see out. He just loved it. My 16-year-old loved it. My granddaughter, who's 4, loved it. I mean, everybody seems to fit in this car and really, really like it, especially the younger kids. The back seat's very comfortable. I can get back there by myself with no discomfort. You know, in other words, I can sit there with another person in the front seat, and I'm just fine. The kids like it too. The trunk is great. I didn't look up measurements or take any measurements. My feeling, just eyeballing it, is that the trunk is bigger in the Jag than the Alfa. Could be wrong. In any case, the comfort and convenience level of the Jag and Alfa are directly comparable. I don't think that one is significantly better than the other. Certainly not different enough to cause somebody to buy one car over the other for that. I think it comes down to, if you want to pay the extra money to get the Alfa's bit higher performance, get the Alfa. Otherwise, I'd probably save the money, get the Jag. We put this car on the dyno. For those of you who don't know, our dyno has hydraulically linked and electronically controlled rollers. It's one of only 2 dynos currently in the country. The other one's in Ohio that are commonly available. I mean, stuff outside of what General Motors has, for example. But it's an unusual thing, and it enables us to dyno cars without the car figuring out that it's on a dyno. It thinks it's on a real road because it sees the front wheels spinning at the same speed as the rear wheels. And we found that a lot of modern cars give drastically different results if they don't see all the wheels spinning at the same speed. So we put it on the dyno, and we'll show you the runs here. We actually did 4 runs. We did 2 runs with all the rollers synced, so the car did not know it was on a dyno. The second run, power dropped a little bit, as you'd imagine, due to heat soak. We don't have very good fans set up. Working on that. Got a lot of stuff going on. I'm a little bit delinquent in getting those fans going. I'm the first to admit that, but I'm getting to it. So power came down a little bit, but power was about right where it should be. This thing has about identical driveline losses to the Alfa Giulia, which makes sense. And it put out pretty decent power, which you'll see. The first run you're going to see here is actually the 2-wheel drive mode. So the lines at the end will show the all-wheel drive dynos that were done prior, and then we'll do another one with all the rollers spinning afterwards, so you can see it. So without further ado, let's get the dyno action going here. So in this first run we're going to do here, the front rollers are not engaged. So the car in this case absolutely knows it's on a dyno. I'll show you the screen here. You can see we've already done 2 runs. We did those with the front rollers engaged, so the car didn't know it was on a dyno. And just like we've seen with the Italian cars, if this car figures out that it's on a dyno, it pulls power out like crazy. It's very dramatic. Now, it's possible that there's a combination of fuses, or perhaps just a fuse to pull to avoid this problem. But if there is, I don't know about it. I don't really deal with this car very often. We just rolled it on and drove it. And the car worked perfectly when the rollers were synced up. But it sure wasn't happy, as you can see here, when the rollers were not synced. The red line was the first one we did. The green line is with the car heated up just a little bit. The lower numbers represent higher temperatures. Or I should say the lower numbers are caused by higher temperatures. The magenta line is when the front rollers are not synced up, so that shows when the car knows it's on a dyno, and it detects that via the wheel speed sensors, of course, and it pulls out power like crazy, which is clearly visible on the chart here. So we'll get back to the dyno and do another pull here with all 4 rollers engaged. The car's still a bit on the warm side. We're not interested in going for peak numbers here. We're just observing the effects of heat soak. We don't have a lot of fan, as I've mentioned. And we're interested to see if this car would react like a lot of the Italian cars do when it detects it's on a dyno. So my son Jordan's doing the pull. I'm going to guess he's using 4th gear. I don't really know. We could figure it out by looking at the speed. Right now the dyno's loading up, and then the run is starting now. You can see RPM going up there on the dyno screen. The graph doesn't mean anything at this point. It gets rescaled at the end of the run. Now that's an easy mistake to make, is to look at the graph while it's in motion. It has no meaning whatsoever. So now he's at the end of the run. He's coasting down, and we'll take a look and see what it did. When it coasts down, it actually measures driveline loss. The dyno can calculate engine horsepower, and the engine horsepower the factory gave turns out is just about right on the money, at least according to our equipment here. And there you go. This was the blue line. This is the most heat-soaked run, thus the lowest power. Not surprising at all. The power it puts out, the peak run there is about 206 wheel horsepower and about 234 peak wheel torque. You can see that the torque especially is very dramatically affected by heat. The red run indicates a fully cooled off motor, and it was just a little bit hotter after when we did the green run, and then you saw the run in two-wheel drive mode. So the blue run is actually the fourth run. So the power comes down significantly with every run, unless of course you give it enough time to cool, which is normally what we do. Normally we just spend enough time in between runs so that all of the temperatures are stabilized. But we didn't do that here. We weren't trying to be super scientific to figure out how much power the Jag puts out, which we figure we've already got from the red run anyhow. We're more interested in seeing the effects of heat soak on this car, which turns out it's just like most other cars with factory intercoolers. And I wanted to verify that it would do what we thought because of the type of ECU it has in terms of dyno behavior. That was very interesting to us. That's about all I've got. Again, I think this is a pretty exciting car. I'd kind of like to work on one as far as tuning and intake and intercooling and that sort of thing goes. I don't know that I will. It doesn't really fit into my business, and I'm not going to run out and buy one of these things. But in any case, I think the Jag is a great car, and I'm going to kind of keep an eye on it and see what people do with these. I think it's a very tunable car with a lot of potential. Anyhow, that's all I've got. So thanks a lot for watching, and I apologize for any mistakes I made for the Jag aficionados. Like I say, it's not really my thing. But I enjoyed the car, I enjoyed making the video, and I hope you guys liked watching it. And again, this was unscripted, so I apologize for all the fumbling around and stuttering. Anyhow, like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and I hope you have a good day. Goodbye.